Alright, good evening, folks. Everything new under the sun. It's Sunday, November 25th. I saw this article. This is on dailymail.co.uk, and it's an interesting creation, sort of evolution story. More confirmation by science, although their years are off. How they calculate years is absolutely skewed. But proof that science does have evidence that all mankind descended from two human beings. All humans are descended from just two people, and a catastrophic event almost wiped out all species 100,000 years ago, scientists claim. Now, we know the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And on day 6, man was created, Adam and Eve. And after that, the world became violent and evil. And God came and, he didn't come, he was there already, and he decided to judge the planet because of the evil in the world. And there was a great catastrophe. We know that is the flood of Noah. And I want to briefly look at this. This is from Genesis 6, verse 9. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence, it says. Let's go to reader mode here. Is it going to work to go to reader mode? Let's see. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all people of the earth had corrupted their ways. So God said, no, I'm going to put an end to all people and all air-breathing animals on the earth, except for, of course, the sea-going, the ocean-going animals, because they would have been able to survive the flood. So God said, no, I'm going to put an end to all people for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. And so it goes on to say, tell Noah to make an ark. So the catastrophe they're speaking of here, and we'll get into it, is really Noah's flood, and the 2 human beings were indeed Adam and Eve. It says all modern humans descended from a solitary pair who lived 100,000 to 200,000 years ago. So when you see 100,000 to 200,000 years, read about 6,000 years ago, because that's what the actual science, the empirical science, indicates. Scientists surveyed the genetic barcodes of 5 million animals, including humans, from 100,000 different species, and remember, that's a lot more than the number of kinds there are. You may have 100 species of dog, but you have one dog kind from which the genetic information exists to create all the other kinds, which they break down into different species. It goes on, and deduced that we sprang from a single pair of adults after a catastrophic event almost wiped out the human race. Now you can look at this at 2 points: Adam and Eve, or Noah and the flood. Of course, in the Noah and the flood, the historical record there, of course, Noah was there, and a total of 8 people were on the ark. So we came out of 8 people if you consider the catastrophic event to be the flood. These barcodes, or snippets of DNA that reside outside the nuclei of living cells, suggest that it's not just people who came from a single pair of beings, but 9 out of every 10 animal species, too, it says. Now, this is there's ways they're interpreting the evidence, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's interesting nonetheless. Stokel and Thaler, the scientists who headed the study, concluded that 90% of all animal species alive today come from parents that all began giving birth at roughly the same time, less than 250,000 years ago. Isn't it interesting that all the animals started giving birth at roughly the same time? Could that have been maybe just after the flood, where they were, where their sole purpose was to repopulate the earth with land and air-breathing animals? It says, throwing into doubt the patterns of human evolution. So they're discounting, or they're questioning their own evolutionary theory, which is a lousy theory at that. It says, the conclusion is very surprising, Thaler admitted. I fought against it as hard as I could. One thing he hasn't fought against is the idea of millions of years and hundreds of thousands of years, when he could consider, say, 5,000 or 6,000 years, and then he would be right on, and he would know that actually science confirms the Bible every day. But I think this is fascinating. We see them getting closer to the biblical and historical account of the history of the earth. The new report from expert at Rockefeller University, along with with the University of Basel published the extraordinary findings in human evolution. They mined big data insights from the world's fast-growing genetic databases and reviewed a large literature in evolutionary theory, including Darwin. So that's their first mistake. They're studying Darwin, which is completely made up. Dr. Stokel said, at a time when humans place so much emphasis on individual and group differences, maybe we should spend more time on the ways in which we resemble one another and the rest of the animal kingdom. And that's coming straight out of Darwinianism. The conclusions throw up considerable mystery as to why the need for human life to start again was needed such a relatively short time ago. Indeed, it was a relatively short time, less than 6,000 years, about 4,000 years ago, 3,400 years ago. The flood occurred, the flood of Noah. And so it is a relatively short time, and the reason was because God judged the planet. It says, especially since the last known extinction we know of was during the time of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, which is a completely bogus number. Dinosaurs, in fact, are alive with us today in the form of reptiles. Reptiles are dinosaurs. Did you know reptiles, they never stop growing? If you give them 300 years, 400 years in a pre-flood sort of atmosphere, elevated oxygen levels, etc., more pure living, no radiation coming from the sun because of the stratosphere and the dome, the ice dome around the Earth, well then that's exactly your dinosaurs. You can go to the pet store today and buy a dinosaur. They never stop growing. Reptiles don't. And so you keep them alive for 300 years because of the cleaner environment they're in, and those are the dinosaurs. It goes on, this opens up the possibility of an inbuilt human evolutionary process wherein we break down and die out, leaving the need to start from scratch. So the Bible speaks of the destruction of the planet due to evil, and of course they're trying to explain it away, and it's not due to evil, but apparently an inbuilt process to break down and die out. Well, how did that inbuilt process come about? If that is true, where did that information come from? Information does not come out of chaos. That's called entropy, from chaos to order, and we don't empirically see that. We don't observe that in this world, chaos to order. So they're making up imaginary processes, and they're dreaming things up because they don't want to recognize that maybe God destroyed the planet because of the evil. It goes on, we also surprisingly similar, not just to every human, but every other species. So why do they say that? Well, the gene code, the DNA is similar. The chromosomes are similar. And that's because a common designer created us, not because we evolved from each other. It goes on to say, if a Martian landed on Earth and met a flock of pigeons and a crowd of humans, one would not seem more diverse than the other according to the basic measure of mitochondrial DNA. Culture, life experience, and other things can make people very different, but in terms of basic biology, we're like the birds, he says. And again, I think his head is far too much in Darwinianism, when he should just read the Bible. The Bible explains how this all came about, and it's actually all absolutely provable, and it's empirical science, in fact. He goes on, at least for mitochondrial DNA, humans turn out to be low to average in genetic diversity. But the study has been misunderstood by some religious parties who thought it meant that we all came into being in some seminal Big Bang type event 100,000 years ago, but that isn't what the findings actually suggest. So he goes on. I think it's interesting. I think they're getting close. They continue to deny it. When they get close to Adam and Eve and to Noah's flood, when they get close to events like that are detailed in the Bible, extinction level events, they look at them and they don't want to admit that. They don't want to admit that God is the creator. They don't want to admit that life is incredibly designed, intelligently designed. They don't want to admit that the events in the Bible actually occurred. So they inflate the numbers by hundreds of thousands of years, and they call it evolution, and they make up their own story around it. It's all in how you look at the evidence and interpret the evidence. We all have the same evidence. It's just that if you're an evolutionist and you read Darwin, it's funny that they did research along with Darwin's, the research of Darwin, and so they came to their results by mining big data, which makes a lot of sense. That's science. That's statistical science. From the fast-growing genetic databases, that's good, hard, empirical evidence. But then They also reviewed large literature in evolutionary theory, including Darwin, so they brought in something that's completely made up, not based on science, and they ended up using the latter, the theory of Darwin, to explain their results, which could have been incredible. And there is, I have no doubt, there is good information in the big data and the genetic databases, the genome project, all that. There is good information there, but it's all in how you interpret it. So if you look at this data, you come up with numbers, and then you go back to the evolutionary theory, evolutionism, and what Darwin made up in thin air, and try and interpret it that way. Well, obviously you see you're going down a bad path, and you're never actually going to find the truth, when you should just let the data speak for itself. And I would be fascinated to hear what the data actually says if they don't put uh, their Darwinian glasses over top. Nonetheless, I think they're getting closer. They're starting to realize, oh, we came from two human beings, and oh, there has been catastrophic events in the near past, and 100,000 years to 200,000 years is very near evolutionary. What, I can't even say the word. With the idea of evolution, it's a very short period of time, because their times are millions of years and billions of years. So 100,000 years to 200,000 years ago is very short. And again, when you look at these date ranges, think less than 6,000 years, and that will get you much closer to the actual age of these things. So I thought it was a great article. Every day they get closer and closer to the actual truth of history. They'll get there one day, or they'll be answering to Jesus if he returns before they get there. And then, well, they'll have to answer to God for what they taught others, basically. And teachers will be held to a higher standard, because those are the ones that are leading people astray. So woe to them who are leading people astray and teaching them things based on their own religious beliefs. And the fact that really they don't want to believe that there's a God, because if there is a God, then that God is able to make the rules. If he is all powerful, he can make his own rules up, and then we actually have to follow them, and they don't want that to happen. They want to be their own gods, and so they use evolution to make themselves believe that they are their own gods and they are the masters of their own destiny. Well, guys, I'll leave it there. Kind of a cool creation evolution story for today. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video.